Have you ever seen a billionaire swing a baseball bat at a man holding a gun in the middle of his own mansion just to protect a child he met on the street? What if that child whispered a terrifying truth, and that truth shattered everything he thought he knew about loyalty, power, and the people closest to him? This isn't just a story about corporate betrayal or a little girl in danger. This is about Graham Whitmore, a cold, calculating CEO whose life was turned upside down by a frightened whisper in the night. The boogeyman hurts me every night. That whisper didn't just pierce the silence. It exposed a monster hiding in plain sight, unleashed a war in the boardroom, and forced a man of steel to confront what he'd become. And it all started on one freezing night when a bruised little girl named Claire Sutton appeared on a sidewalk he never would have glanced at until her eyes met his. Stay with us, because what happens next will shake your heart, stir your conscience, and prove that even in a world ruled by money and power, the smallest voices can still change everything. It was just past midnight in Boston. Snow drifted gently down, catching on the sharp lines of skyscrapers and the iron fences of closed shops. Graham Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Industries, had just finished his 16th consecutive hour in the office. For most of his life, he believed time was currency and emotion was weakness. His empire had been built on logic, control, and iron discipline. But none of that prepared him for what he was about to encounter. Outside a shuttered convenience store near a flickering street lamp, he saw what he first thought was a pile of rags. But something made him stop. A tremble, a breath, a pair of eyes wide glassy, staring through the darkness like they'd seen things no child ever should. She couldn't have been older than 9. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, and her coat, if you could call it, that was more holes than fabric. Her hair was matted, her cheeks raw from the cold. As Graham took a step closer, the girl flinched. Then, in a voice so thin it nearly disappeared into the wind, she whispered, "The boogeyman hurts me every night." He froze. Those words didn't sound like make-believe. They were too quiet, too lived in. "What boogeyman?" he asked, kneeling slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "What does he do to you?" Her eyes shifted, scanning the empty street. Her sleeves slipped up as she trembled, revealing deep bruises. "He finds me no matter where I hide. He hits me. Says if I tell anyone, he'll hurt me worse. He watches me while I sleep." For a moment, Graham couldn't breathe. The silence between them roared louder than traffic. He had walked past hundreds of people like her before, on corners and alleys on the edge of his reality. But now one of them had looked him in the eye. Now one of them had spoken his name for terror, the boogeyman. "What's your name?" he asked gently. I'm Claire, but some people call me Lee. He calls me that too." She said it like an apology. Claire's story poured out in broken pieces: an aunt who died, shelters that turned her away, park benches that became beds. Every night she tried to disappear into the city's cracks, but he always found her. The boogeyman. Graham pulled out his phone and called 911. When the police arrived, led by a cynical older sergeant, Graham's hope was crushed by bureaucracy. "Kids like her, they make stuff up," the officer said, barely glancing at Claire's bruises. "Looking for sympathy, maybe a free ride." "She has marks on her arms," Graham snapped. "She probably fell," the officer muttered. "We'll file a report, but don't get your hopes up. She'll be gone by morning." Then they left her. Just like that. A child on a freezing curb, dismissed like a stray cat. Something snapped in Graham. He took off his $4,000 coat and wrapped it around Claire's shivering body. "Come with me," he said, his voice low. "You'll be safe, at least for tonight." As he lifted her, she didn't resist. She was light, too light, and her eyes, even when resting against his chest, never closed fully. Always watching, always waiting for the shadow around the corner. Driving back to Ridgewood Heights, Graham's estate felt like a spaceship compared to the life Claire came from. Manicured lawns and sensor-lit gates greeted them. Inside, he led her to a guest bathroom. She stared at the tub like it was an artifact. He ran warm water and gave her privacy. When she emerged wrapped in a towel, he saw the wounds more clearly: bruises down her spine, scratches along her ribs, tiny circular scars like cigarette burns. He forced himself not to react, not to scare her further. That night, she curled up on a leather couch, holding a blanket to her chin. For the first time in who knows how long, she fell asleep in silence. But Graham didn't sleep. Something was gnawing at him, something deep, old, and personal. After Claire nodded off, he carefully gathered the rags she had worn. In one torn pocket, he found something strange, a tiny locket. It popped open with a gentle click, revealing a faded photograph of a woman. He dropped it. The woman in the picture looked almost exactly like Emily, his younger sister. The sister who vanished 12 years ago after running away from a troubled foster home. His hands shook as he turned the photo under the lamplight. Could it be a coincidence, a cruel twist of fate? Or had his past come crawling back in the form of a little girl with haunted eyes? At 4:07 a.m., a cry jolted him upright. Claire was trembling, pointing at the window. He was there, she sobbed. He was watching. He's coming back. Graham rushed to the window, but the street was empty. He checked the security feed. Nothing. Yet Claire's terror wasn't the kind a child fakes. He sat beside her on the couch. "You're safe here," he whispered. "No one's going to hurt you again." But even as he said the words, Graham felt something stir in the back of his mind. A shadow, a memory, a threat he couldn't name yet, but one he would soon face. And when he did, everything he thought he knew about his world would shatter. We're sorry for interrupting this story right as it gets intense, but we want to hear from you. Would you have taken Claire home that night or walked away like everyone else did? Do you think the woman in the photo really is connected to Graham's missing sister? Or is it something even more terrifying? If you felt something reading this, please hit like and share your thoughts. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Right now, morning light slid over Boston like a blade of icy steel, and Graham Whitmore sat behind his mahogany desk, feeling every one of the 3 hours of sleep he'd stolen. Security teams had swept Ridgewood Heights at dawn. No intruder, no footprints in the snow. Yet Claire still clutched his coat knuckles white, as if letting go would invite the monster back through the walls. Graham wanted answers fast, so he did something no one at Whitmore Industries had ever seen. He walked onto the executive floor without a tie, eyes blistering with urgency, a child at his side. Heads turned, whispers rippled. The king looked shaken. In the corner office overlooking the Charles River, Brandon Cole was already waiting, perfect suit, charming half smile, a hand resting on a stack of quarterly reports as though nothing were amiss. "Graham," he drawled, "you missed the sunrise meeting." "Everything all right?" Claire's fingernails bit into Graham's palm. Her voice was a ghost. "It's him." Graham felt the words, not just heard them. The locket in his pocket seemed to hum as if recognizing danger. He motioned Claire toward the leather sofa outside reception and strode into the office, closing the door just short of a slam. "We need to talk," he said. "Alone?" Brandon raised an amused brow. "About the street urchin you picked up last night. HR will have a field day. Her name is Claire Sutton." Graham snapped. "She's 9. She's bruised head to toe. And she says the man who hurt her is you." A silence as cold as January settled between them. Brandon's smile thinned, became reptilian. Children dream, Graham. They confuse faces, crave attention. "You think I won't verify I already called Detective Monica Reyes? She's opening an investigation." Brandon's laugh was soft, too soft. "You forget who built the relationships in this city. Judges, donors, politicians, some of us play the long game. Don't let a bedtime story blow up your life." Graham took one step closer. "If you lay a finger on that child again, I will burn every bridge you think you own." Brandon's eyes flicked to the glass wall toward the tiny figure on the sofa. Brave words, but courage is fragile. So are little girls. The threat hung in the air like poisonous mist. That afternoon, the first blow landed. Investors began calling, worried about rumors of misappropriated funds. An anonymous email leaked to the press. Whitmore Industries CEO shelters runaway security risk. Brandon's fingerprints were nowhere visible, yet Graham could taste his presence in every line. By nightfall, Graham's family cell phones erupted with unknown numbers, whispering veiled warnings about accidents that might befall loved ones. He ordered round-the-clock protection, but fear seeped under locked doors anyway. Detective Reyes arrived just after 10 p.m. Trench coat dusted with snow, eyes sharp enough to cut granite. Claire told her everything: how the boogeyman smelled of Cuban cigars, how a jagged scar crossed his right hand, how he laughed when she cried. Reyes recorded every word, then turned to Graham. "Do you trust me?" she asked. "I don't trust anyone right now," he admitted. "But I want this ended." She slid a thumb drive across the coffee table. "Yesterday, an email came to my encrypted inbox, no header, no trace route. It contains video. You better see it." Graham plugged it into his laptop. Grainy night vision footage filled the screen, a narrow alley, a gloved hand gripping Claire's shoulder, a face half lit by a street lamp. Brandon Cole. The camera angle was downward bobbing, gently filmed from chest level, and then Graham's breath left him. The video perspective panned briefly over a familiar monogram, GW, embossed in silver on a leather briefcase. His own briefcase. Someone had hidden a micro camera inside it, using him as the unwitting witness. "Who sent this?" Graham whispered. Reyes shook her head. "Whoever wants Cole exposed and knows you'll do something about it." Graham paced the room, adrenaline pounding. "If Brandon realizes this proof exists, he'll panic. He's already pushing my board to oust me. He'll force me to choose between the company and Claire." Reyes leaned forward. "He's planning something bigger. Surveillance picked up chatter about a demonstration to ruin your credibility. We need to keep Claire somewhere safe off-grid. Tonight." Thunder cracked outside, though the sky was clear. Graham looked at Claire curled on the sofa with a mug of cocoa that trembled in her hands. Memories of Emily, his lost sister, spooled through his mind. He would not fail another girl. "Take her," he told Reyes. "Safe house, witness protection, whatever you can arrange. I'll draw Cole's fire." Reyes nodded. "You'll be a target." "Let him come," Graham said. "This ends now." She escorted Claire toward the door. The girl stopped, turned, and walked back to Graham. From the pocket of Graham's coat, she produced the locket and pressed it into his palm. "My mom told me," she whispered, "real knights never keep their armor shiny. They scratch it up fighting monsters." Graham's throat tightened. "Then I'd better get mine dented." They were gone 5 minutes when the power died. Mansion lights blinked, security monitors went black, and a single emergency bulb glowed red in the foyer. Footsteps echoed, deliberate, measured on marble tile. Graham reached for the baseball bat he kept behind an umbrella stand. Ridiculous weapon for a billionaire, but he felt strangely comforted by its solid weight. A silhouette appeared at the far end of the hallway, backlit by moonlight through French doors. Brandon's voice floated out, silky and amused. "You should have listened, Graham. Now you've traded your empire for a gutter rat who won't live to testify?" Graham raised the bat. "Claire is gone. You'll never find her. I don't need the girl. I only need you on your knees begging to make this disappear." Graham stepped forward, fury thawing the last of his fear. "Come and see what a desperate man will do for someone who has nothing." The hallway seemed to shrink, two predators closing distance, one heartbeat at a time. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, maybe coming, maybe passing. Graham couldn't wait to find out. Tonight would be settled face to face. We're sorry to pause the story at this critical moment and hope you'll forgive the interruption. Do you think Graham should have sent Claire away or kept her close under his own protection? And who do you believe planted the secret camera, an ally inside Whitmore Industries or someone from Graham's past? If this chapter gripped you, please tap the heart and like the video so we know you're with us for the next showdown. Right now, the red emergency bulb flickered once, then steadied. Graham Whitmore tightened his grip on the baseball bat, every sense sharpening into a single electric thread. Brandon Cole stepped out of the shadowed corridor, a pistol loose in his hand, a predator's grin tugging at his mouth. "You know, Graham," Brandon said, voice soft as velvet, "I expected more fight from the man who never loses." Graham advanced anyway. "I don't need to win tonight. I only need to make enough noise for the city to hear." Brandon raised the gun. Noise is easy to silence. A loudspeaker crackled overhead. Detective Monica Reyes's voice boomed through the empty mansion. "Brandon Cole, drop your weapon. We have you surrounded." Brandon's eyes flashed rage. "You tipped them off." Graham risked a glance at the ceiling camera, its little green light blinking. "I didn't have to. You left enough breadcrumbs for a blind man." Sirens shrieked outside. Blue strobes danced across the French doors. Brandon's mask finally cracked. He lunged, firing. Graham dove aside. The bullet shattered a crystal sconce, showering him with glass. Pain stung, but adrenaline blotted it out. He swung the bat. Wood met bone with a dull thud. The gun skittered across the marble floor. Brandon roared, tackled Graham, drove him hard into a side table. Two titans wrestled, one fueled by greed, the other by a rage he didn't know he possessed. Graham's shoulder screamed as Brandon's fingers closed around his throat. Before the world dimmed, a voice sliced through the chaos. "Let him go." A petite woman in a Kevlar vest stood in the doorway, service weapon trained on Brandon. For one unsteady heartbeat, Graham thought he was hallucinating because the woman's face was a mirror of the faded photograph in the locket. "Emily," he rasped. Brandon hesitated. That heartbeat was all Graham needed. He drove his knee upward, threw Brandon off balance. The detective's gun barked once. The round punched into Brandon's thigh. He collapsed, cursing, blood blooming across designer wool. Officers stormed in. Cuffs clicked. The nightmare at last was caged. Graham turned to the woman who'd saved him. She lowered her gun helmet visor, lifting. Tears wavered in her eyes. "It's me, Gray." Time fell away. 12 lost years collapsed into one impossible embrace. Emily Whitmore had entered witness protection, it turned out, after exposing the same trafficking ring Brandon later commandeered. Unable to contact her brother, she'd worked from the shadows, planting the microcamera, sending the email, and finally coordinating with Reyes for the sting. Claire's appearance had accelerated everything. 2 weeks later, the Suffolk County Courthouse overflowed with reporters. Proof gathered by Reyes' secret recordings, financial ledgers, survivor testimonies painted Brandon Cole as the architect of a sprawling abuse and bribery network. He sat pale and silent while the jury declared him guilty on all counts. 25 years, no parole. But the verdict wasn't the loudest moment. That came when Claire Sutton, in a blue dress Emily had bought her, took the stand. She looked out at the packed gallery, voice clear: "Monsters hide behind money, but people with money can fight them too." Cameras clicked through the rising applause. Afterward, Graham resigned as CEO. In a sunlit press conference, he announced the creation of the Claire's Light Foundation, funded by his own fortune, led by investigative teams and social workers overseen by Emily. Its mission: track and dismantle child exploitation rings nationwide. Whitmore Industries stock dipped briefly, then soared when shareholders realized the company's values were now as strong as its profits. Even investors can believe in redemption. On a crisp spring evening, Ridgewood Heights hosted a block party fundraiser. Families filled the cul-de-sac. Paper lanterns glowed over picnic tables. Graham watched Claire weave through the crowd, laughing, face free of the twitchy terror that once ruled her nights. When she spotted him, she darted over and slipped something into his hand, the tarnished locket, newly polished, containing 2 photos, side by side, Emily's and now Claire's. "You keep this," she said. "Every hero needs a reminder." Graham's throat tightened. "Heroes fail all the time, kiddo." "Maybe," Claire answered, "but they get back up. That's why we believe in them." He hugged her, feeling the weight of the locket and the lightness of hope at once. Somewhere nearby, Emily strummed an old acoustic guitar, leading neighbors in a song she and Graham had sung as children. The melody floated over rooftops into a sky no longer haunted. Sometimes a single whisper can topple an empire of silence. Sometimes a child's courage rewrites the future of an entire city. And sometimes, if we're lucky, the darkest story ends with people dancing under lanterns, their scars lit like constellations instead of wounds. Because the night eventually breaks, and when it does, the light rushes in. Before we leave Graham, Emily, and Claire to their new beginning, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which moment in Graham's journey resonated with you the most? Do you think his decision to sacrifice his position for a greater cause was the right move? How did this story land for you? Comment number 3 if it touched you deeply. Number 1 if you're not satisfied, and number 2 if it felt just okay. Also, let us know which country you're watching from. And don't forget to tap the heart, and share this video so more people can join the conversation.